Welcome back, everybody. I am Follygon, and in today's digital sculpt, I am going to be creating a female face inspired by the artwork of Meybis Cruz. If you are new around here, click that subscribe button, and if you want to learn more about digital sculpting, check out gumroad.com/Follygon. There you can find my custom brushes, online courses, and a bunch of other free stuff as well. Let's get into it, starting off with our best friend, the sphere. I begin by flattening the sides of that head, pulling out a secondary shape for the front piece of the face, and then I create a kind of just general pull down for the neck. This process is not exactly how I always do it. I'm always experimenting and trying new techniques whenever I sculpt something that I've done multiple times. I never want to get stagnant in my workflow, so I'm always trying new things. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. This was actually one of the times where I was very happy with the quick result that I got from this basic shape for the head. I found that flattening the sides of the head really kind of visually messed with me at first, but after I played with it a little bit more, planed out the sides of the head, and began transitioning the side plane into the front plane of the face, things started to work out really quickly. So this might be something that I experiment with more in the future. Really, it just comes down to practice, putting in the hours, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't, and trying to improve even if it's just a little bit. I really want to emphasize how important the early stages are of sculpting, because for a long part of this sculpt, I will keep in a lot of these harder kind of planed out edges. And the character is going to start feeling pretty good here pretty soon, although a lot of areas do look awkward, some of the area for the lips, the nose, but this is part of this early process, just sculpting in a landmark for that form, and then coming back later to continue to work on and develop that more. So I'm really stressing the hard planes here, because it's a part of my process that I think a lot of people maybe get confused by. When you see me sculpt something, it often looks really strange and awkward here. Think of this part of the process as kind of like doing a line drawing for a painting that you might do later. Before you start painting, and a lot of people do just get in right to it and start adding in color and everything else directly onto their canvas. But if you want to plan ahead, you start off with a sketch. That way you can get the basic form down, all the good landmarks that you're going to be referencing later on. And if you start painting a little bit too early, you might find that things are off proportionally, and it might be really hard to go back and fix those mistakes. Same thing is true here in sculpting. If I want to figure out a softer plane change or a surface turn, which you can see a really good example for the front plane of the face going into the side plane of the face. The jawline is another really good example for that. The brow, nice and sharp right now, that top ridge flowing back around the head. All of these are areas that I am going to soften out later. But first, I have to figure out how that shape is going to transition and where the apex of that transition is going to occur. These are all really important for figuring out information for your character's silhouette. And silhouette seems like a really odd thing to talk about in sculpture if it's not something that you do a lot, but in my opinion, the silhouette of your form is the most important part of sculpture altogether. You might be thinking, what about all the cool textures and the 3D stuff like going on the surface? And yeah, that's cool. Like that's stuff that happens way later in the process. And I don't even add any surface form to this. I mainly just focus on making my shapes as nice and appealing as possible. It's really easy to get sidetracked by some fancy textures, skin pores, wrinkles, whatever it might be, and kind of let the bigger shapes fall to the wayside. But I just want to emphasize how important that kind of stuff here really is. And for those that recently watched my lip sculpting video, this pair of lips is pretty close to that third pair that I did, creating a nice kind of rounded, simplified shape there. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll put a link down in the description for you guys. And we'll continue forward here, continuing to soften and develop the forms that I had. So now you can see, if you look at the top of the head or the brow line maybe still has a little bit of that hard kind of surface turn in there because there is a bigger kind of sharper plane change, but the top of the head is relatively kind of a rounded form, and you can see that I have completely removed all those hard edges and softened and blended between those shapes. So this is exactly how you would do it if you were sculpting something in real life with clay, wax, mud, whatever you're playing around with. And a lot of my sculpting techniques actually do come from traditional sculpture. I am not someone that has done a lot of things with traditional sculpture, but if you are looking for ideas and techniques of how to improve, it's a great place to learn. I am always looking for new techniques and new ideas for creating things either more quickly or just understanding form in a better, more accurate way. So if you're looking to level up your digital sculpting, maybe consider checking out some videos or tutorials of traditional sculptors as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my course, The Appeal Academy, which is not just a course, but a mentorship program where we go through the entire content together, doing one-on-one feedback sessions that I created because it's something that I wish I had when I started sculpting. I am really liking the silhouette for this character at this point. I do make one larger change later on to the proportions for the head, but that is not until right before I go in to add some quick asymmetry for the expression. So we'll get to that here very soon. But first we need to add some paint to the different areas of the face, starting off with the eyes. I will typically do a very simple just white and black section to kind of mark how the eye is facing inside of the eye socket. It's really important to make sure that you have that looking the correct way, and it will really help you figure out how you want to place your eyelids. Next up comes the painting process for the skin for the character. I decided to go with a darker skin tone, something pretty saturated at first. Then I start lightening in some more fleshy areas, darkening in areas that I want to call a little bit more attention to around the eyes and lips, as those are very expressive areas. And if you know anything about my painting process or have watched any of my videos before, you know I love to overpaint everything, kind of make it look a little bit like some clown makeup. This isn't quite clown makeup yet, but it's kind of heading in that direction, especially once I start adding in some more warmer areas. So what I'll typically do is overpaint and then go back through and kind of blend between all of those colors, trying to neutralize some of it and make it, in general, a little bit more subtle. For the eye painting, I have a nice tutorial for you guys if you are interested. I'll throw a link up in the corner of the screen and down in the description for you. A very simple process for hand painting eyes. You start off with your base color, get a little bit darker on top, and then throw in your pupil. You can add a little bit of a highlight to the bottom. This is a very quick general overview. If you want more info, check out the tutorial. And then I also, of course, hand paint some shadows. You have to be really careful when doing this kind of thing for your eye. If you're going to hand paint any kind of highlight or shadow, you can get a really cool effect by doing that, but you can also make things look really awkward, especially if you plan on changing some of the shape later or changing the direction the eye is looking. Some of that might not read super well. So for me, I changed the direction that the eyes were looking. I wasn't planning on doing this at first, but I decided it would be nice to offset it. So some of my hand-painted shadows look a little bit awkward, and I have to go back in and touch those back up. Head proportional changes, like I was mentioning before, just making that a little bit more short. I didn't like how tall the head was feeling. I wanted to squash that down a little bit. Some quick expression to the brow, just adjusting that slightly. Already made some changes to the eyelids, and a very slight offset for the mouth and the nose, also softening some shapes around there. It's noticing a little bit of hardness in a couple areas that was not looking super great. So it's always important, even when you are getting further ahead, that you want to take a step back every now and again, make sure everything's at about the same level of finish. The hair was super easy. It's just an extraction for the basic shape of the back of the skull, and then I go back through and sculpt some additional form on there. When I typically do hair, I'll just kind of quickly go over it once with my clay brush to start getting some asymmetry in there right away, figure out the flow for that form, and then go back over it and start refining it a little bit more. This was just such a simple piece that I didn't want to spend a ton amount of time on the hair, so I kept it super simple, softened it a lot here at the end, and that is where we will call her finished. But hey, if you are skipping here to the end to check out the final sculpt, consider going back and watching the process. If you enjoyed the sculpt, I know you'll enjoy getting to see it be developed as well. Click that subscribe button if you are new around here, and check out gumroad.com/Follygon for things like my courses, brushes, and materials. Please keep the suggestions coming down in the comments for future videos, and you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.